The following Conscious Consumer Network recording of a live broadcast is available to purchase in high definition at ethymarket.com. Support free and independent media by becoming a CCN pledger. For €10 a month, you can have unlimited access to CCN high definition downloads at ethymarket.com. Ethymarket, the ethical marketplace for conscious consumers. Each life we incarnate into has a divine purpose. For the majority of people on this planet, their purpose has eluded them. We have become so distracted with the struggle to survive that we have forgotten what we are here to do. In alignment with the sacred laws of nature, the ultimate purpose of all existence is to create and evolve. We certainly do not incarnate into life with the intention to destroy. And yet, we have come to live in a very destructive world. As a result, there are many out there who feel lost or adrift, whilst knowing deep down inside that something is very wrong with their reality. Many people wish they could do something of value, anything that is purposeful, instead of having to submit to a system of slavery in order to survive. It is important never to let go of that feeling. That is your soul crying out to you, telling you that your life has value and that you do indeed have a purpose. The most important thing you can do in life is to recognize your purpose, and often that requires a lot of soul searching. Life indeed dishes out some pretty tough challenges, which will either move you closer towards your purpose path, or will give you great training for when you finally realize what it is that you came here to do. But more often than not, the very clues about your life's purpose are hidden in plain sight, woven into the very fabric of our existence. But we are so easily distracted by irrelevant details that don't really matter, that often we miss the very obvious right in front of us. It is because of our willful ignorance of anything that does not fit our preconceived ideas that the truth about the nature of our reality is so readily hidden in plain sight. This is a very deep and personal journey, which has come to be expressed in many aspects throughout my life. This is not just an attempt to retell a bunch of research and pass it off as my own, for I am very grateful and openly acknowledge all the many wonderful people that I have been given the opportunity to work with and to learn from in order to get to the point where I've come to know what I now know. This is a journey I was always destined to go on, and likewise, how I have come to know this information forms as much a part of the story as the information itself.
One, your life
Good evening, everybody. My name is Mel Ve, and this is Conscious Consumer Network Live. Welcome if you have joined us for the first time to an episode of Dragonology. For those of you who have been following along, thank you ever so much for your dedication, and really much appreciate all the letters and correspondence that we've been getting over the course of these 2 seasons, which, by the way, is quickly drawing to a close. That's right, season 2 is on to episode 11. Can you believe it? We'll only be doing 2 more episodes of this particular season, so sorry for you if you really love the series. I'm not sure if there will be a 3rd one, but we'll try and pack as much as we can into the next few episodes for you. Tonight, we're going to be dealing with cult culture, okay? We've dealt with the whole concept of ritual and cultism in quite a lot of depth over the last 2 seasons of Dragonology. And tonight we're going to be doing what I like to do when we start putting together a lot of loose ends and sort of just covering everything off in a greater context, drawing things together so people can see how things tie into each other, because we've given a lot of information, but it really is now time to draw all the little pieces of the tapestry together to start forming the picture that needs to be discussed. Okay, cult culture basically is all based around the draconian construct. The entire nature of the artificial construct known as the Matrix, into which humanity is enslaved, is entirely dragon or serpentine in nature and construction. All culture is a homage to dragon worships via cults and rituals, okay? So it's important to understand and get your head around that. Basically, the entire root of our culture is based in ritual, and all ritual is really about the worship of the dragon. And you can pretty much go through just about every single pastime we human beings engage in and pretty much bring it back to cults and rituals. So without further ado, let me demonstrate some of the more common aspects of this. But first, let's just define what exactly a cult is. A cult is a particular system of religious worship, especially with reference to its rites, rituals, and ceremonies. Now, that's one definition, okay? And that's when we're talking about cultism in the religious context. But there is also a secondary context to that, which doesn't necessarily have anything to do with religion, okay? And that is an instance of great veneration of a person, ideal, or thing, especially as manifested by a body of admirers. Now, this can actually touch on quite a lot of areas of our lives if we think about it. So let's get on to exactly how this sort of pans out. First of all, as we've already discussed, there's the religious aspect, and it's a fair assessment to say that all religion qualifies as cultism. And we've covered this off in quite a lot of detail over the course of the last 2 seasons of Dragonology, so this should not be too far a reach for anyone to understand. What is, I think, to most people even more surprising is the more, I'd say, social aspects which tend to come up as cultism. Let's get into that. Well, first off, defining what cultists are, okay? Cultists basically like to be with people just like them, often becoming so exclusive they reject anybody that does not follow their ways and ideologies, okay? And over here, this little picture of you says, there is no inexplicable phenomenon so bizarre that you could not find some group of humans somewhere in the world to worship the damn thing. And it's true. Near enough anything that you can get a bunch of people to put a lot of energy and attention into, you can create a cult-like status out of it, or evolve a cult from it, a dedicated group of followers who subscribe to those ideals and ideologies. And if you do not, you're not part of the clique, you're not part of the cult. So that is the key prerequisite of most cults, is that you subscribe to their ideologies. So let's have a look at some of the examples. Obviously, we've spoken about the religious aspect, but there's also the religious aspects which I would say
you could define really as closed religious cults. And that is the kind of religious cults that, you can't just walk into the church and sit in, sit in the pews, put money in the box, and okay, you belong to that church and therefore you're part of that cult. There are some closed religious cults. For example, the Ku Klux Klan, Knights of the Ku Klux Klan, and they are indeed knights because they are in fact controlled by the Vatican. But these kind of cults are, I think, actually what most people think of when you think of cults is these sort of closed religious groups, these sort of fanatical people who do crazy things like dress up in white hooded tops, put white hoods over their heads and white robes and, burn crosses and all sorts of crazy things. And yeah, that's generally the idea people have when you think of cult. But that, I think, is just one variation of it. And perhaps it is the most extreme variation of it. But there is something to this. Let's first deal with this one, which is the closed religious cults. Religion often fuels fanaticism, which often results in damaging and destructive behavior under the guise of upholding certain ideals and ideologies pertaining to the demands of that particular organization, sect, or cult. Now, this is something I've dealt with so much over the last, since we started CCN, really, is really trying to hammer home what real spirituality is and really what's distraction. And a lot of that falls under the label of the New Age cults. And although there was a massive resurgence in the 60s and 70s of the New Age cults, it really started to gain popularity towards the end of the 1800s with the rise in popularity of works by Aleister Crowley and Madame Blavatsky, which fueled a promise of transition and transformation and healing through esotericism, I beg your pardon. So these sort of like alternative thinkers were actually considered a cult, okay? But really, it was just the bringing in of the New Age, and this is kind of all come through a lot, again, as we say, with the ascended masters and things like that. Again, all fueled by the promise of transformation, transition, and healing through esotericism and the acquisition of mystical knowledge. Now, this is something most people may not know, but it's not too far a stretch of the imagination to say that gangs are cults, because like most cults, gangs also have a set of rules and ideologies and even dress codes that, you have to abide by sometimes. And a good example of this would be, for example, biker gangs. And I've used here the Hells Angels because much like the counterparts over here, being the Knights of the Ku Klux Klan, and much like the New Age religions, okay, the Hells Angels are also controlled by the very same factor. The most easy one to actually pinpoint would be the Jesuits, because the Jesuits actually control the Hells Angels, which basically fall under the label of organized crime gangs. These guys are responsible for the distribution of narcotics across the world. And of course, we know that the CIA is single-handedly responsible for the cocaine trade. That's why they own Colombia, near enough. But yeah, these guys are the ones who make sure that it gets around. Pretty handy that they have motorbikes and they're actually on the road. That's how you transport the stuff. But yeah, they are very much a cult. The Hells Angels are a cult. And there's often sacrifices within the Hells Angels as well. I can't tell you how many times I've heard of these guys putting guns on each other and shooting other biker gang members, etc. It is all very cult-like in nature. And like I said, they follow a dress code, certain ideologies. Yeah, they all drive bikes, and all sorts. But ultimately, at the very top, the whole of the Hells Angels, all the chapters are controlled by the Jesuits, who control the New Age religions and who control all the knightly orders, including the Knights of the Ku Klux Klan. So there's a theme here, and that is that all cults are ultimately controlled by the very same forces at the top. So let's have a look and see what other cults there are that permeate through our society. Well, the most innocuous, but probably not too far of a stretch, again, for people to kind of wrap their head around, would be the world of fashion. And this is really a culture that I'm familiar with. I was a professional model when I lived in London for a number of years, and I really got a sense of what this fashion cult is all about. And again, it's like this season, this particular look is in, and you can't wear the look from last season because, that's old, that's so last season kind of thing. And there is a whole kind of do's and don'ts that come with it. And the world of fashion has really evolved its own cult-like ideologies, and much of which has to be adhered to. And if you don't, you're deemed unfashionable. And for those who subscribe to the cult of fashion, oh my God, the last thing you want to be deemed is unfashionable, because, then you're not part of the cult kind of thing. And it's all about, subscribing again to the ideologies. That is the key. Of course, here's another one, which is a little less obvious, but yeah, the fitness cult. Again, this comes with its entirely own culture. And much like all cult obsessions, the fitness cult is an all-consuming activity demanding total dedication. I mean, the creatine powder, the, air-fried chips, these guys, they really freaking go for it. It's really total dedication to an ideology, which is the pursuit of physical perfection, which, to be honest with you, is not far from the pursuit of spiritual perfection, but, it's still very much a focus on the external locus of identity. And there's nothing wrong with being healthy, but sometimes the fitness cult can actually become so all-consuming that people completely overdo it. And I've got friends who, have been anorexic, who've been bodybuilders, and I look at them and they're so obsessed with the way they look on the outside that they actually go overboard and stop looking attractive. They become too muscly or too thin, and it can become so all-consuming that they don't realize the damage they're doing to themselves. But fitness is the new cult, and well, it's not new. I suppose fitness has been an obsession of many people, staying in good shape, staying strong, staying healthy. But it can, like most cults, also be incredibly damaging. Now, being someone who grew up at the beach and who loved surfing as a child, this is something I became instinctively aware of, is how groups of surfers, friends, and they'd all go out like a little tribe together. They'd all go surfing, paddle out, wait for the wave. And it's like they're all obsessed with the same thing. And they all have the same mindset. And they all follow each other. And they're like a little group. And it's very difficult to break into that little group. They're very territorial. They're very tribal. They tend to like the same breaks. And again, they all subscribe to a particular ideology and mentality. And surfers often exhibit cult-like mentality, which is based on a somewhat tribal nature, often following the same ideologies and obsession with the ultimate ride. And surfers is just one example. Of course, you get footballers and baseballers and every other sport, but I use this particular one because it's something I observed for myself as a kid. Now, we've dealt with this quite a lot in previous Dragonologies about sporting culture and sort of where it is rooted. All modern day sports finds its origins rooted firmly in the practice of rituals. And I will go into this a bit later, that we give a very good example of this. But rituals, sporting rituals, which took place in ancient times, often were a homage to the gods. Now, an example of this is the Olympic Games, which was a homage to Zeus. Okay, and this is, if you haven't watched the previous Dragonologies, go back and watch them. We've covered this off quite extensively. Often, these sporting events would be accompanied by ritual sacrifice, and in fact, they were so important that nearly everybody attended. All the statesmen and priests and everything. In fact, these sporting events were as much a part of the religious aspect of life as was going to church back in the day. So that's very interesting, is that all sporting culture has essentially evolved out of ritual. And very much like all ritual, it is based in cultism, okay? And so it's fair to say that sports is a cult unto its own. A slight extension of course, of the sporting culture then would be the gaming culture. And that can be everything from your basic chess game with the Masonic tessellated tiles and the warring factions, which you can obviously, just from the basic themes of chess, you can see how that would tie into dragon worship. But not just that, for example, video games or, card games, all gaming culture, okay? Games and gaming culture all have origins rooted in ritual. Competition is based on war and conflict of opposing and competing sides and parties. Now, war is very much a theme that's inextricably linked with the dragons and something we've covered off quite a lot. And it is always about one or two factions or several factions playing off against each other, and there's always a winner. Okay, so it's competition, right? We've dealt with competition and races, and of course the necessity for the conflict, which takes the form of a game, supposedly non-violent, supposedly. Anyway, then there's the working culture. Now, I remember working in an office environment where, our working contract says we get an hour for lunch, but I was told by my boss that under the working culture here is to pop out, get your lunch, and come back and work at your desk whilst you eat your lunch, so you don't actually get your hour lunch break. You just, but that's the culture. We're told that was done under the auspices of being the working culture of the environment, irrespective of the fact that our employment contract said that we had an hour's worth of lunch. Never mind. We were sort of like bullied under the guise of work culture. You got to fit in with the work culture. You got to subscribe to the ideologies, etc. Anyway, that's how they turn you into slaves. But the working environment normally comes with a set of systematic processes, beliefs, and ideologies. Some people can call it terms of the employment contract. And all these need to be adhered to as part of the working culture of that particular employment stroke slave environment. And then, of course, there's the cult of celebrity. And this, for me, is one of the most distracting and pernicious of the cults, because I think this gives people a false sense of, illusion of what they should be aspiring to the point where people become obsessed with it. They have to buy every freaking Hello and People magazine to see who the Kardashians are, fucking now, for example. But the fascination with celebrity culture has reached a cult-like obsession. Most celebrities are themselves, in fact, cult members, which is a prerequisite for their celebrity status. That's right, they sell their soul for fame. And how they're controlled is usually through various cults, be it Scientology, be it Kabbalah, or outright Satanism. There's various ways in which the celebrities are controlled. This is an interesting one, and probably one that most people haven't already thought of, but everyday high school cliques can actually take on the nature of a cult, often resulting in kids being bullied and traumatized due to peer pressure, which can be cult-like in nature. Again, there's certain ideologies and do's and don'ts, and you've got to fit in, you've got to wear the right thing, you've got to be cool, because if you're not, you're out of the group, you're not part of the clique. And being in a sort of very strict semi-private all-girls school, this was something that I experienced in great detail in the 5 years that I was interned in the institution that indoctrinated me. And sadly, I was interned with the biggest bitches you could ever imagine, who, if you didn't do exactly as they wanted, you were absolutely villainized and demonized, and they would turn everybody against you and make your life absolute hell. I mean, we had girls who became anorexic because they were so bullied about even eating the slightest thing which might be bad for them, because it was such a culture of, we got to be skinny, and very, very sad, actually. And this for me is one of the most damaging and probably one of the cult-like environments that people don't really associate with cults, but it is, okay? Any cliques where there's any kind of social pressure is cult-like. And you cannot deny that. Cult indoctrination. Our entire existence is predicated upon cult indoctrination of one form or another. And that is absolutely true. Even sitting in front of the TV or reading a newspaper, you're subjecting yourself to cult indoctrination. Don't fool yourselves. It's not informing yourselves. It's indoctrination. And any indoctrination is done under the auspices, under the auspices of being education. But really, it's to get people to a certain cult-like identity, a certain cultural identification that they can be put into little boxes, perfectly shaped, so they can be perfect little worker bees, in the factories for the oligarchs at the top. No, don't subscribe to that kind of mentality. We are all individuals. We don't need to fit into any cult or be a part of any specific culture per se. We just need to be who we are. The cult indoctrination is one of the easiest ways to strip down your identity and detach you from your true inner self. And of course, the party culture of all cultures. This is my favorite cult of them all, without a doubt. I grew up a bit of a hooligan. I love to go out partying and squeak my flip-flops on the dance floor. But even the party culture has ritual practices such as dancing to music, which is all based in ritual, and of course the consumption of alcohol and drugs, which again is rooted in ritual. And of course the party culture comes with its whole own set of ideals and practices and whatnot, which go along with it. For example, you got a queue to get in, everybody does it, and then you got to allow yourself to be searched because it's part of the, the ideology or the practice. And anyway, it all falls under this whole label of cultism. And this is an interesting one. We've covered off food and eating quite a lot in the last few Dragonologies, but this is one thing people don't think of as a cult, but it is, because feasting is inextricably linked with ritual, as we have explained over and over again in previous Dragonologies. And feasting is actually so much a part of ritual, and the eating or the consumption of the sacrifice is so much a part of ritual. I have yet to come across like some of the earliest forms of rituals that don't involve some kind of feasting. Even our modern day rituals, Christmas, Easter, birthdays, all involve food. And, it's every freaking ritual you'll find food near enough. So as is cultural identification through food. So feasting is inextricably linked with ritual, as is cultural identification through food. Think about that. For example, let's think of one. Sweet and sour chicken, typically Chinese, or chicken chow mein, or what do we have? Thai green curry, being particularly Thai. You can sometimes identify certain cultures through their food. Or you look at food and you go, oh, we'll have Indonesian tonight. Oh, we're going to have Thai tonight. Oh, we're going to have Italian. So cultures are often identified through food. It's very interesting, that. Okay, education culture. Education and culture are inextricably linked, as cultural indoctrination or ritual practice is reinforced by the modern day educational system, which has nothing to do with providing us with truthful information and everything to do with getting us to believe in the rules and ideologies of that particular cultural environment. So yeah, it's all about cult indoctrination. Yeah, and that's what education is. It's nothing to do with informing and enlightening and enhancing and improving our quality in being as humans, right? It's all about indoctrinating us, making us smaller, making us, detaching us from our true selves, trying to fit us into little boxes so that we fit the roles that society and culture deem right for us. Language and culture. All cult-based education is administered through a specific language, and in turn, different cultures are defined by their language. Think about this. Different cultures are defined by their language. And this is very true because you think about, for example, the Italian culture, they speak Italian. Or let's think about the Dutch culture, they speak Dutch. Or the Germans, they speak German. Every single culture, well, not every culture, a lot of cultures have different languages. It would be unfair to say that every single culture has different languages because the American culture and the British culture are two different cultures, not terribly different in practices, to be honest, but they speak the same language, kind of, slightly different accents. But ultimately, language is an indication of culture. Cultural programming. It is through the process of cultural programming that human beings have been programmed into self-sacrifice through various ritual processes. Okay, now that we've covered off a bit of sort of the all-encompassing what cultism and culture is all about, we're going to climb into some of the more tasty aspects of dragonology tonight. And I thought I'd read you this really awesome piece that I found. It's called The Nature of the Beast. On her way to work one morning, down the path along the side of the lake, a tender-hearted woman saw a poor, half-frozen snake. His pretty coloured skin had been all frosted with the dew. "Oh, well," she cried, "I'll take you in and take care of you." "Take me in, O tender woman, take me in for heaven's sake. Take me in, O tender woman," sighed the snake. She wrapped him up all cozy in a curvature of silk, and then laid him by the fireside with some honey and some milk. She hurried home from work that night. As soon as she arrived, she found the pretty snake she'd taken in had been revived. Now she clutched him to her bosom. "You're so beautiful," she cried, "but if I hadn't brought you in, by now you might have died." Now she stroked his pretty skin and kissed and held him tight. But instead of saying thanks, the snake gave her a vicious bite. "I saved you," cried the woman, "and now you've bitten me even. Why? You know your bite is poisonous, and now I am going to die." "Oh, shut up, you silly woman," said the reptile with a grin. "You knew damn well I was a snake before you took me in." Now, why I've decided to read this particular piece is because I wanted to bring attention to the nature of the beast, which we will get into right now. Okay, dealing with some basic symbolism, all right? Bones. Bones are a symbol of the serpent, yeah? And I know that just sounds like very blatant to lay out there. I'll go out and explain this and you'll see how this works because once you get into this, you really cannot deny that this is in fact the case. Bones are a symbol of the serpent or the dragon. And a good example of this, the skull and crossbones, which are used for various things, including these various secret societies that use skull and crossbones as their emblems. I'm thinking now particularly of the skull and bones in Yale University, but it's one example. But the skull and crossbones are often also used as a symbol of danger, yeah? So when we talk about the nature of the beast, what is the nature of the beast? It's dangerous, yeah? Because if you know a snake's dangerous, why would you hold it and cuddle it tight? So the skull and crossbones being a symbol of danger, okay, brings us to the next slide, which is the word danger, which is etymologically cognizant with anger. Because you take away the D, what have you got? Anger. So danger leads to anger, yeah? And the word anger is rooted in the Latin word anguium or angui, meaning angel or dragon. Now, that won't be new to you if you've been following along with dragonology. And as we've discussed many times, angels are in fact dragons. Dragons are in fact angels. They're one and the same thing, cannot be separated. So the word danger, take away the D, gives you anger. Anger is rooted in anguium or angui, the Latin words, which ultimately reference angels and dragons. Interesting. Snake bones. Have a look at this. The skeleton of the snake comprises mostly of a skull, vertebra, and ribs. Yeah? Lots and lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of little ribs. The serpent is one of the very few mammals that when it matures, it grows extra ribs to accommodate its size. The creation of Eve. The growth cycle of the snake explains the biblical analogy between the serpent and the dragon and rib regarding the creation of Eve. Yeah, remember Eve was made from the rib of Adam. Now, we're dealing with this extensively through this particular theme, interbreeding between dragons and human beings. As we go through this dragonology as well, this theme comes back up again. But the temptation of Eve, this is a picture by William Blake. And in Genesis 3:13, interesting numbers, it says, Eve explains to God, the serpent beguiled me, when she's talking about the fact that she was tempted by the serpent. And in Hebrew, the word beguile is ishiani, right? And this word ishiani can be read as put his seed in me, indicating human and dragon sexual intercourse, impregnation of the female by the dragon. Angelic rape or serpentine rape, we've covered this off in great detail. Now, the word ishiani is etymologically cognizant with the word initiate or initiation. And often sexual intercourse is part of an initiation ritual. Yeah, there's a lot, sex is inextricably linked with ritual. In fact, that's a slide I should have put in there, sexual culture too, because that is sometimes taking on somewhat of a cult-like status. But as we say, the word ishiani, which is the Hebrew word for beguile, also means or can be read as put his seed in me. And that is etymologically cognizant with the word initiate or initiation. Now, what's very interesting to notice about snakes and ladders is the fact that the skeleton of the serpent, composing largely of ribs and vertebra, is represented esoterically as a ladder, hence the game Snakes and Ladders. And this is where, as we said, all games are rooted in cultism, and all cultism is ultimately rooted in ritual, which is ultimately in homage to the dragon. So it makes absolute sense that a game, or gaming, as we spoke about earlier, would feature things that are representative of the serpent. So not just the serpent here, but the ladder, which is representative of the ribs of the serpent. So interesting that this forms a board game. Now, the word rib in the English language is etymologically cognizant with the Arabic stem RBB. Now, obviously, there would be letters in between there, but this actually means Lord. Yeah, RBB means Lord in the Arabic stem. Now, we spoke about over here how the snake is made up of a skull, ribs, and vertebra. We're going to cover off each of these three aspects, okay? The skull, the ribs, and the vertebra in a little bit more detail so you get an understanding of why they're important. The skull. Skulls are often found and used in ritual practices and are often the centerpiece due to significance in relation to symbolic aspects pertaining to the veneration of the dragon and a referencing of the dead. And it's also very interesting to notice that a lot of churches, it's not uncommon to find churches and sacred temples adorned with human bones and skulls, like almost entirely, much like many works of masonry and architecture, and masonry and architecture is a theme we'll cover off again, all right? Much like many works of masonry and architecture, skulls and bones are symbolic of dragon worship, which of course is why you find them at the altars in church and making up churches, is because they're symbolic of the dragon. Here's some other examples. I really thought these were very interesting ways in which bone, this is pelvic bones over here, making these little fans and little skulls in the center, and lots of little bones used to make a much bigger picture, but very interesting. Look at that. I mean, massive amounts of human. That's a person. That's a person. That's a person. Huge amounts of humans have been used to create these effects of these skulls and bones, which make up lampshades, emblems. Here you've got what looks like a crown with a cross on the top and somewhat of a shield going on there. And behind it, again, many, 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 many more skulls. You can just see them all in the background there. Now, what's interesting to note, I spoke about ball sport earlier in gaming, Mayan ball sport rituals. The Mayan ball game was a serious and solemn experience filled with ritual importance. Religious leaders attended, as did most chieftains and other government leaders. What's interesting to notice is that the captain of the losing team was usually decapitated. Hence the etymological similarity between the words captain and decapitation. Yeah, cap is obviously referencing the head, and decapitation is referencing the taking off of the head. Now, that is how the word captain got its name. It's because in those days, the person who was considered to be the captain, if they lost, was decapitated. And that's where the name captain comes from. Not the head of a team, but the person whose head was taken if the team didn't win. So, of course, you can imagine he's the guy screaming the loudest at the rest of the team to move on and, score goals or whatever, or however they played their games. But that is where the original root and role of captain comes from. Yeah, from the fact that this was the person who was decapitated at the end when their team lost. Now, craft. Let's deal with craft a bit. This is a word that has many applications. The relationship between man and the angel stroke dragon is indicated or initiated through craft. Now, craft can reference many things, okay? The word craft not only references witchcraft, which is the more common aspect we deal with when you think of cultism and ritual, but it also references arts, architecture, builders, and masons. Dealing with the builders for a moment, the title of builder or architect documents the dragons who are responsible for the construction of earth and include the replenishment of humanity post-deluge. Bear in mind that the human beings that lived on this planet before the dragons came along, they didn't build massive temples and buildings. In fact, they didn't even really have many enclosures. When you look at stories of, like when Captain Cook went over to Australia and they were looking at taking over the land, there was a law called terra nullius, which means that if the land didn't have any permanent structures on or any enclosures, it meant that it was uninhabited. Even if it was inhabited by the original peoples, it was uninhabited. So terra nullius basically means you can take over any land that doesn't have any enclosures or any permanent structures on it. Because guess what? The original peoples largely were somewhat nomadic. Some of them actually lived perhaps in one place, but didn't have anything like the concept of temples or, massive, libraries or whatever it is that builders and architects have to design. There was none of that. That all came along with the dragons and the angels, as we say, who were responsible for all of this construction, and particularly post-deluge, which, of course, they were responsible for the deluge too. Now, one of the interesting things that I've always loved about when you start to look at this particular, the builders and architects, and the stuff, the ruins they left behind in the past, is normally when you come across ruins, one of the most common things you normally come across is the columns. Yeah, the columns. Always the columns. And of course, kolu is rooted in dragon etymology. These are usually the things that are left standing. They are the strongest parts of most buildings. You know, the walls have fallen down, probably some of the lintels, but you normally always find the columns standing because they're normally made of solid stone or pieces of stone, which are then sort of put together. But yeah, in ruins, normally always find columns somewhere. What's interesting is columns do turn up in most ruins, but the word column, obviously being rooted in dragon etymology as well, kolu, the first 4 letters, obviously dragon etymology root word. We'll get into that in a bit. But let's look here for a moment. The word jed, all right? The jed, JD, we'll cover that off a bit more. The jed is a symbol. The jed symbol is one of the more commonly found symbols in Egyptian mythology and is a column symbolic of the backbone or vertebra of Osiris. You can find this fact in Wikipedia. That is what this particular column, which is a very common symbol in Egypt, in ancient Egyptian mythology. This symbol is actually representative of the backbone or vertebra of Osiris. So, yeah, having dealt with the snake skeleton, we dealt with the head, the ribs, and now we're dealing with the vertebra. Those are the only 3 different distinctions of bones that we look at when we look at the serpent skeleton. And they are all symbolically represented in different ways, in ritual, in cultism, and in the ancient world in various symbolic ways. So the column is actually the representative of the vertebra or backbone of Osiris, and it's called a jed, the DJ root, again, which we shall get into in a lot more detail. Here we go. Here's the symbol of the jed. Here's more columns, more of them here, another one here, and you've got it there. Yeah, let me just go back so you can see very clearly, and you can see it over here. This is an Abydos. This is a wall relief on Abydos, and this is a ancient Egyptian seal ring. Yeah, and there you have your jed. So, as we've spoken about many times before in dragonology, the DJ symbol basically is an indication of, well, should we say, the cobra at rest, which is an Egyptian hieroglyphic, is phonetically translated from hieroglyphics into the phonetic English sound j. Yeah, the j or j. Now, you'll find the DJ popping up again in the word jinn, which also can be spelled with an E and one N, jinn. But DJ is very commonly found in jinn. And basically the jinn, for those who haven't come across them, you should have if you've watched previous dragonologies. The jinn reference an Arabic classification of malevolent angel or demon or devil or winged serpent deity. You can see some of the wings here and some snakes going on here. Here's some horns, you know, all the key little trademarks of dragons and angels. And here we go. You've got the DJ in hieroglyphics. Yeah, this is the resting cobra, which is the j sound. And again here. And here's some more jinn. Pictures of jinn. Now, as we've spoken about previously and last, I think it was episode 10's dragonology, the Masonic G is actually a reference of the DJ sound, j. Yeah, that's where some people pronounce it g, the hard g, but it's actually j from the DJ. The G is made up of the D and the J. Phonetically pronounced, the DJ is phonetically pronounced and often written as G or J. What's interesting to note as well is that the j sound, you put it onto the word host and you got the word ghost. And dragons are often referenced as angelic hosts, which is where we get the word hostile. You know, like anger or danger, hostile is synonymous with anger or danger, as we've spoken about already. When we add a G to host, it gives us the word ghost, which of course can be a spirit or a phantom, but you know, ghosts. We've come across ghosts. Everybody has some kind of image in their head of what a ghost may be or could be, having watched some kind of horror flick somewhere. The word ghost is synonymous with the word phantom and spirit, which are both rooted in dragon etymology. We've dealt with this before. Phantom comes from the word feigns and spirit from the word spiro. What's also interesting to note as well is an interesting sort of dealing with ghosts and spirits. Clouds are a symbol of the dragon. And this might surprise some people, but you just have to look at the etymology, because clouds is actually rooted in the kolu, kulu root. So this is the root of column there, yeah, which of course is dragon root words. These actually reference dragon root words. And this is also very interesting. Just in case you didn't believe me, the clouds are actually a symbol of the dragon. What are clouds? Clouds are made up of water vapor. The word vapor is etymologically cognizant with the word viper. The words ghost, spirit, vapor, and cloud are all synonyms of each other and are all rooted in dragon etymology. All of these reference the similar quality of spirit, cloud, vapor. You know, you can see it, you can put your hands through it, kind of thing. Okay. I'm going to read a couple of extracts here from two different books. The Nephilim shall be called evil spirits when they came to live on earth. Evil spirits shall exude from their flesh, because they were created from a mixture of mankind and other watchers who fly above. All right, again, referencing human angelic or human dragon intercourse, and as we spoke about earlier with Eve. And that's from the book of Enoch. Here's the second one. The first result was that Adam and Eve became naked. Before their bodies had been overlaid with horny skin and enveloped with a cloud of glory, and the horny skin dropped from them, and they stood there in their nakedness and ashamed. Interesting that. Again, we've got the cloud again, which comes up. So we've got spirits in this one and cloud in this one, which of course draw into this particular theme of cloud, spirit, vapor, ghost, all being very much the same quality or aspect. God's appearance as a cloud signifies sexual intercourse with humans and is correlated with phantom, ghost, or spirit, hence the term Holy Spirit. And of course, one of my favorite artists, I reference Da Vinci's work so often through the course of Dragonology, so I couldn't help but pull up one of his beautiful artworks. This is a picture of Lydia and the Swan by Leonardo da Vinci. And Lydia's name is derived from the Hebrew word Leda, meaning childbirth. Okay, obviously she's given birth to children, most likely offspring of the dragon or the angel. And who is the dragon or the angel? The swan, of course. Look how the swan is holding her. She's holding the swan. Yeah, there you can very much see there's intimacy between them. She's naked as well. Okay, and we've spoken about this too. Nakedness is obviously also a symbol of serpent. The swan, of course, in this particular drawing is a symbolic aspect of the angel or dragon. And we've covered this all before, the interrelationship between dragon and bird. Okay, last week we got into this quite a bit. Extipacy, I beg your pardon. Extipacy, very difficult word to say. Extipacy. The relationship between angels, stroke dragons, and humans is deduced from the act of examining the entrails, referenced in Greek as extipacy. I'll get it right one day. Now, of course, this particular practice indicates the extractions of the internal organs. particularly the intestines, which is symbolic of the serpent. And if you think about your large intestine, it's called the colon, okay? C-O-L-O. And that is a dragon root word. Now, this is very interesting. Much like the clay livers we indicated in episode 10, you've also got a clay tablet representing the bowels of a sheep with some markings along the side. This is cuneiform, so very old. Cuneiform markings down the side here. And this is very common, obviously, with rituals. They record the findings of having examined the entrails. Yeah, the entrails are meant to obviously be able to give readings. That's why they did it. You read the liver, or you read the entrails and see what they say for omens. And this is very interesting because the word omen turns up in the word omentum or omental. Yeah, and the omentum and omental references the gastric organs used in divinatory rituals to foretell omens, which is also very interesting because the term omerta references a code of conduct or silent rites specific to the Mafia Commission. And the Mafia Commission, again, are controlled by the Jesuits. Yeah, and of course, omerta is etymologically cognizant with omental, which of course is omentum, omental. So the burnt offering or sacrifice, which we've dealt with quite a bit, also known as a holocaust, the silent rites accorded to the omerta indicate the removal of the omental organs. Okay, so the omerta being sort of the mafia, the silent rites, which is the omerta, okay? The silent rites, according to the omerta, indicate the removal of the omental organs and the worship of the serpent through burnt offerings, because that's what they used to do. They used to then take the organs and, throw them, after they'd read them, throw them in for a burnt offering, and sometimes they'd then eat them, which is how we've ended up with cooked food, and why we start eating meat is really, it's all based on ritual practice. And then the offering creates smoke, which is similar to cloud, vapor, spirit, or ghost. Is it not? That's what smoke is very similar to: clouds, vapor, spirit, or ghost. And then, of course, the word smoke in the Arabic language is dukhan, which in turn is etymologically cognizant with dragon. Now, all the letters in our language are in and of themselves symbols. The letters of the alphabet each have their own particular symbolic references, okay, indicating much deeper allegories. And we've dealt with this quite a bit in previous dragonologies. And for example, the G is actually the D and the J mixed together. And of course, it's the seventh letter of the alphabet. And of course, the A, as you said, was always a representative of the all-seeing eye, the capstone above the pyramid. But there are much deeper allegories for some letters. And how these letters are used and where they are placed also play a significant role in determining their symbolic expression. And I'll just cover off a few of these before we finish off. So we've got them covered off. And as we've spoken about before, the sacred G and J. In the Italian language, there is no letter J. Rather, it is replaced by the letter G. An example of this, Jehovah in English, in the Italian is written as Jehovah, yeah, with a G. Another example of how the G is replaced by the J, the word George. In the Spanish language, letter G is often replaced by the J and pronounced with an H. For example, George becomes Jorge. Of course, this is a very common depiction, St. George of England slaying the dragon. In fact, George and the Dragon, St. George's Day is massive, much like St. Patrick's Day is massive in Ireland. St. George's Day is massive in England. And, this saint slaying dragon theme is very, very common. And of course, then there is Jesus, all right? Before the name of Jesus was written with a J, it was actually written with an I, as in Jesus. So the J is also a recent representation and doesn't show up in many ancient languages. And in fact, the J is also supposed to be serpent-like in shape, much like the S. And what's interesting about the letter I, which obviously takes over from the J in Jesus as Jesus, is the letter I is phonetically cognizant with the word I, as in the I in your head, which in turn is synonymous with the watches or watch, peer, stare, and look. And all these words are all words which are rooted in dragon etymology. We've covered this off plenty in previous dragonologies. I love this. I see everything written with the E-Y-E. And of course, the small letter I, much like the A, is representative of the all-seeing eye in the capstone, separated from the pyramid. Hence why we dot the I, because what this is, that's the I and that's the dot. Look, that's the I, that's the dot. That's what this represents. Yeah, that's why you use I. You say it I, like as in the eye in your head, and this is why you create it like this, is to look like this. Okay, that's it for tonight, folks. If you've missed anything, please go back and watch all the previous episodes. We've got Dragonology Season 1, Episodes 1 to 13, and Dragonology Season 2, Episodes 1 to 10. We've only got 2 more episodes of Dragonology Season 2 left to go, so make sure you catch up if you've missed out on anything. This has been an amazing experience to teach this series to you guys, so I hope you enjoy watching it as much as I have enjoyed teaching it. And if you do enjoy our stuff, please contribute. We do have a network support fund, and our various donation buttons are on our CCN's website. And of course, we have a GoFundMe campaign going at the moment, which is intended to raise $60,000 to keep CCN on the air for 2016. If you can't donate, please share the campaign or like it on Facebook. We are desperate to get the funding we need to keep this network on the air for 2016. We've just made such amazing headway this year in 2015. It really has been the year of CCN. And it would be great if we could stay on the air for 2016, guys. So if you like what we do, please go to our website or go to the GoFundMe campaign and donate, help keep CCN on the air for 2016. We have less than 2 months left of 2015, so please help us keep us on the air. You know you want to. And if you've missed out on anything or you want to check out when things are broadcast, please check out our broadcast guide, which is updated weekly and also on the homepage of our website. And as usual, we thank you for supporting free and independent media. My name is Mel Ve. It has been a pleasure to be with you, and I will see you all next week.
The pursuit of a free, fair, just, sustainable world should be the focus of every person on our planet. The reason it is not is because people are kept distracted by the illusions and deceit propagated by the corporately controlled mainstream media. In recent years, the rise in truly informed, savvy researchers and journalists who have all taken to the air in various capacities has given rise to a new genre of media. We have seen the explosion of truly free and independent media, and thus the need to create an ethical live broadcast network that facilitated these brave and tireless souls became apparent. With a great amount of research and meticulous planning, Conscious Consumer Network was created. CCN is a first-of-its-kind broadcast network that is specifically dedicated to free and independent media with absolutely no government control, corporate sponsorship, or advertising. The live broadcast network runs full-time with an average of 25 shows and live broadcasts a week. The high-definition live stream is free to view and is accessible from any computer terminal with online access, including laptops, tablets, smartphones, and smart TVs. All shows are archived onto YouTube and are freely available to view in order to educate and inform as many as we can without imposing monetary limitations. CCN was successfully launched on the 1st of January 2015 and has gone from strength to strength as we have improved and increased the capacities and functionalities of the network, as well as an ever-rotating and improving lineup of content which is broadcast daily. CCN is blessed to be the home of some of the hardest-hitting, most cutting-edge, truly educational and informative materials. Catch interviews, reviews, and talk shows from the many different and beautiful perspectives from CCN's family of interviewers and broadcasters. Since the 1st of January 2015, we have produced over 800 shows. We have over 2 million YouTube minutes watched every month, and we have an average of 1 million hits a day on CCN's website. CCN is viewed in over 147 different countries and hosts broadcasters from 5 different continents. The time has now come to generate funding to keep CCN on the air for the duration of 2016. The total sum needed to continue broadcasting for 2016 is $60,000. This budget includes the replacement of computer equipment, the acquisition of secure servers, which are most needed as we keep getting hacked, plus the renewal of the broadcast license fee for 2016. This is a fraction of the annual budget used by mainstream media networks producing a similar quantity of content. This is what makes CCN so successful, unique, and accessible, is the ability to run a project of this size and reach on such minimal resources. CCN does not claim ownership over any of the material we produce and broadcast, as we firmly believe that information is the common heritage of all beings, and thus CCN belongs to you, the public, and it is up to you all to keep CCN going. CCN would like to thank those who have contributed to the network in the past with resources, content, information, time, and energy. We thank you for supporting free and independent media.